The coal is the size of a fingertip now. A hand cups around it, shielding it from drips falling off the stone ceiling above, and the mother watching from across the shelter already knows what that posture means. Her child hasn't stopped shivering in an hour. The hunter came back at dusk with nothing, no meat, no explanation needed, just the look on his face and the way he sat down without a word. The elder hasn't spoken either. He's watching the entrance, the way he always does now, listening for something none of them can name yet. This is not a reenactment. This is an ordinary week, tens of thousands of years ago, and this family has no idea how many more days of rain are coming. The rain didn't attack their bodies first. It attacked their certainty. Within hours, the ground that carried yesterday's tracks turned to featureless mud. Scent, the invisible map the hunter had relied on his whole life, washed flat. He went out anyway, because staying meant guaranteed hunger tomorrow, and spent the entire day reading a landscape that no longer spoke to him. Every print he found dissolved before he could follow it. Every trail ended in more rain. He came back at dusk soaked through, and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. But the failed hunt wasn't the worst part of that day. Wet skin pulls heat from the human body dramatically faster than dry skin ever could, fast enough, researchers studying modern cold exposure have measured, to push a strong adult toward hypothermia within hours. Nobody in this family needed a study to know that. They'd learned it from loss, at some point, generations back, and the lesson never faded. It lived in the way the mother watched her child's lips for the wrong shade of color. It lived in the way the elder insisted, without being asked, that the smallest body in the shelter sat closest to the flame. So the fire became everything. And right now, in the mother's hands, it's nearly gone. The first attempt to save it fails. Damp wood hisses without catching, filling the shelter with smoke instead of warmth, and for a few seconds there is only darkness and the smell of wet ash. Then the elder remembers wood stored deep inside a hollow log days earlier, shielded from rain before this storm even started. That wood catches. The flame steadies, and for a moment, everyone in the shelter breathes at the same time, though no one says why. Archaeologists working at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa have found some of the earliest solid evidence for sustained fire use inside shelters, layer upon layer of ash built up over repeated occupation, proof, researchers argue, that fire wasn't a convenience early humans enjoyed. It was infrastructure they couldn't survive without. And hearth sites tucked beneath overhangs on multiple continents show a consistent pattern, stone positioned at angles that deflect rain away from the flame, a pattern too precise, at too many separate sites, to be accidental. This family didn't just build a fire. They read the shape of the stone around them like a blueprint, chosen generations before this particular storm, by people none of them ever met. But the fire wasn't their only problem, because water had found the shelter's lowest corner. A dark line crept steadily across ground that had been dry that morning, and everything had to move, the child, the bedding, what little food remained, further back, away from most of the fire's reach. At Sibudu Cave in South Africa, researchers have found layered plant bedding built from sedges and rushes, with leaves carrying natural insect-repelling compounds worked in deliberately, replaced periodically rather than left to rot. Where a body slept during a long wet stretch was never left to chance. It was engineered, quietly, the same way everything else here had been. Then hunger sharpened into something crueler. Isotope studies on ancient bone reveal what scientists call seasonal stress markers, physical evidence, recorded directly in the skeleton of rainy periods that pushed the body toward its limit, sometimes for weeks at a stretch. Evidence suggests some groups answered this by storing dried meat and plant food in elevated, moisture-resistant caches, built specifically for weeks exactly like this one. But cache is empty, and on the fourth night, the mother has to choose, give her share to the child shivering against her, or keep enough strength in her own body to search for food herself tomorrow, if the hunter fails again. Nobody says the choice aloud. It just happens, the way it always had to, in the dark, without ceremony. But hunger wasn't the biggest danger, because outside, the stream had grown a voice of its own. It was rising toward the ledge, inch by inch through the night, and if the family needed to move, there was exactly one crossing point left that hadn't already gone under. Someone would have to test it eventually, not knowing whether the current would take them with it. For now, they wait, listening to the water get louder every hour, and telling themselves it hasn't reached the ledge yet. And even that wasn't the worst of it. Predators don't lose their advantage in rain the way humans do. Many hunt by scent and low-light vision, both barely disrupted by falling water, which means the same weather blinding this family barely touches whatever is moving beyond the firelight. Every exhausted night carried a second fear underneath the obvious one, something patient, circling just past the edge of what the fire could reach, waiting for the flame to fail. The elder volunteers to stay awake and listen for it, not because he's strongest, but because sleep costs him less now than it once did, and he knows it, and he never says it out loud either. He sits facing the dark for hours, listening to water dripping somewhere behind him, counting nothing, thinking about nothing but the sound of the rain, until even that becomes a kind of company. Then something none of them expected happened. By the 5th day, the same rain that had nearly broken this family began quietly feeding it. Termites, driven from flooded ground, swarmed in numbers no dry season ever produced, a sudden, almost effortless meal, gathered by hand in minutes. Fish pushed into flooded shallows they'd never enter otherwise, easy targets for a sharpened branch held perfectly still. Rainwater pooling in stone hollows solved a problem that never fully disappears in any season, finding water at all, without a single trip to a river that might not be safe to approach anymore. For the first time in days, the child eats until she's actually full. Nobody says anything about it. They just watch her. And inside the shelter, the enforced stillness did something researchers didn't originally expect. At ABRI du Marais in France, evidence shows early humans twisting plant fibers into cordage with real technical sophistication, using techniques that experimental archaeologists have found are far easier to produce during long, uninterrupted stretches with nothing else demanding attention. The hunter's idle hands turned to rope, twisting fiber over fiber by firelight, slower and more careful than he'd ever have time for on a normal day. The elder's hands turned to a blade, sharpened with more patience than urgency ever allows. The child watched both of them, the way she always did, and learned, without a single spoken word, exactly how it was done. The very thing threatening this family's survival was, at the same time, quietly building its intelligence. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer societies today have noted something similar. Forced stillness during bad weather is frequently when tool-making, teaching, and storytelling concentrate most heavily, not because people have nothing better to do, but because for once, nothing more urgent is competing for their attention. This is the real answer, and it was never only about mud, cold, and fire. Multi-day rain forced something onto early humans that easy weather never demanded, planning without proof. Preparing for a danger you cannot yet see, based only on memory of danger already survived by someone else, in a different rain, a long time before. That isn't instinct. That's strategy, running quietly through minds with no written language to hold it, necessary again and again, across thousands of years, long before anyone could explain why it worked, only that it did. When the rain finally stopped, the world outside looked exactly the same as it always had. This family did not. Every person alive today descends from a hunter, a mother, a child, an elder who made choices exactly like these, often enough, well enough, to pass their genes forward through storms none of us will ever have to survive ourselves. Modern research into low-light, high-humidity environments shows measurable effects on human mood, sleep, and stress chemistry, meaning the heaviness some people feel during a week of grey, relentless weather isn't imagined. It's inherited, passed down from bodies that once had very good reasons to feel uneasy when the sky refused to clear. We call it something smaller now. Restlessness. A low mood with no clear cause. A quiet pressure behind the ribs on an ordinary rainy afternoon, with nothing dangerous anywhere in sight, and no fire to protect, and no child to keep warm. Maybe it isn't a malfunction at all. Maybe some old, patient part of the human nervous system is still listening for a storm that stopped being a matter of life or death 10,000 years ago, and simply never received the message that it's finally safe to stop listening.